Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited. The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are struggling to find their way in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy of The Man Crisis in paperback and Kindle Unlimited today. One of my viewers wanted me to talk about the tragic mass shooting that took place at Virginia Tech University on April 16th, 2007. Now, back in 2007, there was a tragic mass shooting when Sung-Hee Cho, a senior at Virginia Tech, decided to participate in a mass shooting in an effort to try to replicate the Columbine massacre. Now, in this tragic incident, 32 people wound up losing their lives as Sung-Hee Cho went and participated in the shooting rampage, which ended where he took his own life. Now, the police and many in government see Sung-Hee Cho's Virginia Tech massacre as one of the worst mass shootings in America, but when I take a critical examination of Sung-Hee Cho, he definitely fits the pattern and profile for beta males that I talk about in my book, The Man Crisis. And it seems like Sung-Hee Cho was a ticking time bomb ever since he was a little boy and emigrated here from Korea to America. And ever since he was about 8 years old, his relatives noticed that there was something definitely wrong with your Sung-Hee Cho, and they were out here concerned about his behavior, but because they didn't really understand how to deal with a man in crisis or a beta male, they didn't know how to get him help. Now, one of the problems with many of your beta males is that they really don't know how to socialize in social situations, and your Sung-Hee Cho, who was so-called extremely shy, didn't know how to talk at all. And I believe he had a lot of anxiety about talking because a lot of beta males, they really don't know how to communicate effectively. And that's what makes them go out here and not talk when they're in social situations, even though they are considered very well-mannered and well-behaved. They just do not know how to go out here and communicate effectively with others, because sometimes a lot of these males, they have really poor interpersonal skills because people don't know how to communicate with them effectively. And then some of them have trauma that as related to social situations where people are extremely harsh when they go out here and communicate. And because these people are harsh to them when they are trying to socially communicate, this makes the individual further withdraw. But as some of these individuals withdraw, they oftentimes have a lot of anger, and that anger oftentimes simmers and boils behind the surface, because a lot of these beta males, they are angry that they cannot communicate in the way that they want to communicate, so they're angry at themselves, and they're also angry at others who are harsh and critical towards them as they're trying to go out here and communicate. So there's a lot of anger under the surface of these kids, and yes, they will be well behaved on the outside, and they will do well in elementary school, because with Sung-Hee Cho, I see the same pattern of behavior that I saw when I was reading Elliot Rodgers' manifesto, and he talked about how he had good times as a young child, and he could function as a young child in certain situations. But when these children start to enter into social situations that are outside of that school, that's when they start having some serious problems. And your Sung-Hee Cho was having problems even again when he was in certain situations, because he didn't really know how to talk to kids, and he didn't know how to socially interact with children. So there were serious problems with him. Now, some people thought that this would possibly be autism, but I believe that this was just, again, what happens with your beta male, because, again, beta males, because they don't really get raised in a proper fashion, because some people don't know how to work with a male to help him overcome things like social anxiety and being an introvert. It looks like autism, but the whole thing is that this child needed to be nurtured and taught that in a social situation it's okay to make mistakes, but sometimes you deal with these families, and again, they don't know how to deal with these situations. They want their kids to be perfect, and that creates a ticking time bomb situation, because what the family did was they tried to help the boy by trying to take him to church, and then what happened was he ran into a church where he ran into a hostile environment. And again, this is one of the things that leads to a lot of these beta males. They have problems as related to social situations, and they try to function in those situations, but it just doesn't work out. Now, these problems got worse as your Sung Hee Cho entered into adolescence, and when a lot of these beta males enter into adolescence, and they've had all of this anger in their early childhood as related to their ability to communicate and their ability to form relationships, this is where all of that anger starts to simmer and boil, because in your middle school, this is where a lot of times you get the bullying, you get the harassment, you get all sorts of judgments, and this is what leads to a lot of these boys winding up becoming more and more angry. And that anger is not something you're going to see directed in at you. No, a lot of these males, they hold that anger in for extended periods of time, and they hold it in, and they're not going to let you know that they're having all this anger inside of them. What people will do is they'll bully these kids, they'll harass these kids, and they won't really react in ways. A lot of times they just shut down, but that shutting down is a very dangerous sign, because that's that person simmering and boiling in anger. Now, as he was simmering and boiling in anger, what your Sung Hee Cho was doing was he was hearing about the Columbine Massacre, and he said himself he wanted to replicate the Columbine Massacre because he was angry at all of these kids, I believe, for picking on him, and he was angry about the social situations that he did not know how to function in, and he wanted to hurt all of those people, and I believe that was the starting point for his anger. Now, as he was out here with this anger, his parents were trying to get him help, but they really didn't understand that the type of help that he needed was really, again, related to the man crisis, and this boy was a ticking time bomb for an extended period of time. Because one of the problems that we have in public schools is they don't really know how to deal with beta males, because a lot of schools, they will not get involved unless this kid is like making all sorts of threats, and even then they just send them to the school therapist or a therapist. But with these beta males, you have to do more than that, because you have to get to the roots of that anger, and you also have to give them structures, because a lot of these kids, they don't know what boundaries are, because they're ticking time bombs. And again, he expressed a lot of this anger in much of it throughout his adolescence, and he sat there expressing it in passive aggressive ways, because he felt like he could not go out here and defend himself in some ways, because that's where he had this anger at these so-called rich kids when he was in a church youth group, and he felt angry at those kids. And I believe part of that anger was one of the motives for the mass shooting that he participated in at Virginia Tech. Now, as he was dealing with all that frustration and anger from growing up as a kid, he then moved over and graduated high school and went into Virginia Tech. And when he was in Virginia Tech, that's when a lot of the frustrations he had really started to manifest as what I believe to be a mental illness. Because a lot of times with these beta males, what makes a lot of these males become what I believe to be mentally disturbed is they keep trying to make things work from a female's social perspective, and these males, because they're trying to work things like females work it out, what happens is these boys don't know how to navigate the world as men, and because they don't know how to navigate the world as men, they don't know how to function in the world, and that dysfunctional behavior they start to participate in starts to impact their mental health. Now, as your Sung Hee Cho entered into Virginia Tech, his behavior was becoming more and more erratic. So he started out in a poetry class with Nikki Giovanni, and she saw his mean streak and saw him as writing as intimidating, and she saw problems in him from the beginning. But the whole thing is that after she had him removed from his class, there wasn't really much really done outside of a warning. But his behavior was becoming disturbing because he was not only writing about extremely disturbing things, he was also photographing women's legs under their desk, which is some really disturbing behavior, because this is the type of behavior that beta males participate in, because some of these guys, they don't know how to socialize with women, so and they've never been taught how to socialize, so they start acting in these very disturbing ways, taking pictures of girls' legs like your Sung Hee Cho did, and even going out here participating in behavior like following and stalking women. That's something else your Sung Hee Cho did. He went out here stalking and following women, and his behavior again was fitting that pattern and profile for a lot of these beta males. A lot of these beta males, they do not know how to socialize, they do not know how to interact with people, and they start participating in these weird and disturbing behaviors because they have not been taught any sort of socialization at all. Yes, these guys they will be very, very intelligent as related to book subjects, but their people skills are extremely poor. And that's one of the things that I believe led to a lot of frustration for your Sung Hee Cho, is he did not know how to navigate the world socially as related to interacting with men and women, and that was one of the things that frustrated him and angered him, and that was one of the things that was leading to him boiling in anger. And as he was boiling in anger, he was going out here creating a rose-colored reality where he started to create imaginary girlfriends from outer space. I mean, he was really participating in some extremely disturbing behavior, and he was thinking this behavior was perfectly fine. And that's one of the other parts of the extremes as related to beta males. A lot of them, they will be participating in these disturbing and out there behaviors, thinking it's perfectly normal because in their rose-colored reality, everything is perfectly fine, and they're thinking these behaviors are okay, but these behaviors violate people's boundaries, like when he took pictures of girls' legs with his cell phone, and when he was out here following and stalking women. These are extremely, again, concerning behaviors for when you see them, and they show that this beta male is really not understanding the concepts of boundaries, not really understanding the concept of respecting people's personal space, and not really understanding that there is a line in social interactions. And because they don't understand these concepts as related to boundaries and social interactions, because they have really poor social skills, they go out here, participate in these behaviors, not understanding they have crossed the line until somebody from law enforcement tells them, or they get a severe beating from a group of people. I mean, these are the kind of behaviors that your simps, again, participate in. And I talk about these type of behaviors in my book, Stop Simping, Why Men Don't Need Finance to Get Romance. But in the case of this guy, he was participating in what I call psycho simp behavior, because the psycho simp is out here, he's thinking that he's stalking women, and again, participating in perverted behavior is normal, and acting really weird is perfectly normal, because again, he sat there and said he had an imaginary girlfriend he called Jelly, a supermodel who lived in outer space, and it was just disturbing behavior. And this disturbing behavior concerned his roommates, because they looked at him and said, look, this guy is acting really weird. And they told their friends not to visit their room. I mean, this guy was clearly having some serious behaviors that were really dangerous. But the whole thing is, most people didn't take him seriously because our mental health system here in America is absolute garbage. I mean, this is a man in crisis who, again, well, his behavior was becoming more and more erratic and more dangerous, and he was falling apart right in front of people by participating in some, again, really disturbing behavior. And people didn't really know, again, how to deal with that behavior, because when they used to, because the whole thing is that most people don't know the danger of a beta male in the later stages of their rage. And your Sung Hee Cho had a lot of rage inside of him because he did not know how to function in a world socially. I mean, he was going to class and signing sheets, putting up question marks, and participating in some really, again, disturbing and strange behavior. And people gave him psychiatric evaluations to try to put him in some sort of mental hospital. But the whole thing was his behavior was not really there for an assessment. But he definitely was somebody who needed to have been dealt with in the mental health system. But America's mental health system is complete garbage. And what happens is that all of these ticking time bomb beta males wind up falling through the cracks. Now, as he was dealing with his frustrations at this university and was this ticking time bomb, your Sung Hee Cho was sitting here really angry about his station in life, angry about his whole direction of his life, and he had a lot of anger, and he used, and I believe, again, one of the motivations he had was this misplaced anger he had at these so-called rich kids from his early days. And he was also angry because he was talking about debauchery, and I believe he was talking about debauchery because he was angry for the same reason Elliot Rodger was angry, that he could not go out here and have relationships with women and socialize with women. And I also believe he talked about deceitful charlatans, and he was angry because he felt deceived as related to being able to function in the world. But this male was extremely dysfunctional, and he just really was out there reading parts of his manifesto. I mean, this was a man in crisis, a ticking time bomb, and he was going to explode in this rage. And what's really sad is most people didn't know how dangerous this beta male was until he participated in the massacre at Virginia Tech University, which sadly took the lives of 32 people, teachers and students on campus, and wounded many others. I mean, this guy was a ticking time bomb for an extended period of time. I mean, for almost 20 years, he was a ticking time bomb. And if they had had the man crisis back then, I think it would have probably saved a lot of lives, because I could look at Sung Hee Cho's pattern and profile as a beta male, and I could tell you that this male was having the beta male rage, and it was the beta male rage as related to his masculine identity that was motivating him to go out here and participate in this violence, and his inability to know how to navigate social situations. And all of this was leading to all of the simmering and boiling that he was in anger, and eventually exploding in this rage. And as he exploded in this rage, he went out here with a Glock 9mm and I believe another pistol. And then used this to participate in this mass shooting. Now, this whole mass shooting, again, was one of the worst incidents in American history, and it was one of those incidents that had people talking about gun control. But the whole thing was, your Sung Hee Cho, like many other mass shooters, bought their guns legally. And that's why the whole gun control argument falls completely apart when it comes to these mass shooters, because the issue with these mass shooters has to do with the dysfunctional way that these males have been raised, and the way these dysfunctional males are raised is why they become ticking time bombs. Now, this male, every one of his family members knew he was a problem. They knew that there was an issue, but they didn't know that the issue had nothing to do with developmental issues. It had to do with him becoming a dysfunctional beta male. Because again, beta males are good at following instructions. They are good, obedient servants. They are very nice on the outside, but they are simmering and boiling with anger on the inside because they are frustrated because they don't know how to function in social situations. They don't know how to communicate in social situations. They don't know how to they don't know how to work with and study body language and nonverbal cues. They don't really understand how speech works because everything with them is basically very literal, and they're very submissive to everyone, and they're all sometimes not only angry at others, they're also angry with themselves, and they're angry with themselves because they don't know how to function in social situations, and because they don't know how to function in social situations, that is one of the foundations of their anger. And then as they are bullied and harassed in these social situations, that frustration turns into more anger. They simmer and boil in that anger, and then when they can't make things work in social situations as related to their poor interpersonal skills, what these males do is they explode in rage, and they want to hurt as many people as possible. Now, that's probably one of the reasons why Sung-hee Cho was fixated on Columbine at a young age. He wanted to hurt those who he believed hurt him. And I believe that's one of the reasons why he participated in the Virginia Tech shooting, was he had been having a lot of anger ever since he was a little boy at people for falling apart in social situations, and he wanted to lash out at all of those people and make those people pay for failing him as he saw it, or being mean to him as he saw it. Because again, a lot of this beta male anger is really about them not being able to function as men, and as these males go out here, they don't know how to function. And again, this is what leads to them going out here exploding in this rage, and that's what happened here with Sung-hee Cho. And that's one of the reasons I believe he participated in one of the worst mass shootings in American history. Now, the big problem with America is that America does not acknowledge America's man crisis, and we look at all of these incidents as isolated incidents, and we're not looking at the overall pattern as related to each of these incidents. Because when you look at the pattern as related to each of these incidents, you can see that each of these incidents follows a pattern as related to the way these males are raised, the way these males socialize, the way these males are taught to function in society. And because these males are taught how to function like a female as related to their life skills, what happens is that these males do not know how to function as a man. That frustrates them, that angers them, because they go outside in the world that expects them to function in a certain way, and then that makes them so dysfunctional that they just wind up trying to reconcile the faulty logic they were told as young children, and this makes them fall completely apart. But in the case of Sung-hee Cho, many of his grandparents and his aunts saw the problem, but they couldn't identify the problem. They thought it was a mental illness, but I believe that mental illness came later on in life because he didn't know how to function as a man, and as he didn't know how to function as a man, he became a time bomb that wound up blowing up, and he wound up blowing up and taking the lives of 32 innocent people. But what's even scarier than Sung-hee Cho is that America, again, refuses to acknowledge the man crisis in this country, and we don't have ticking time bombs like we did in 2007 with Sung-hee Cho. No, thanks to the COVID lockdowns, we now have landmines all across this country, and these landmines are littered all across this country because we have 2 to 3 generations of these beta males all across the country. And as these men have been littered across the country, it's like walking on eggshells these days, because you don't know what these men are going to do when they explode in rage, and you don't know how much damage they're going to do to society. Because like a landmine, if you stand directly on it, you're going to be blown to bits. But if you are in the path of this landmine, you can get hit with shrapnel as well. And that's one of the scary parts about America today, is that we've got a lot of these males out here, like your Frank James and many others, who are alleged to have, gone out here and alleged to have participated in this kind of violence. And our government is in denial about how dangerous these men are, because we've got, again, not hundreds or thousands, we've got millions of these men out here, and these men are a clear and present danger to the country, and many people don't know how to want to acknowledge this man crisis or try to make efforts to help these men. These men are, again, ticking time bombs all across the country, and it's a scary place to be. But when I look at Sung Hee Cho, he definitely fits that pattern and profile for a man in crisis, and we really do need to do something, because if we don't do something about this man crisis here in America, there may not be a nation left standing. Now, if you want to learn more about the whole pattern and profile of beta males and what makes them dangerous, you can pick up my book, The Man Crisis, on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find The Man Crisis on Smashwords, the iBook store, and Google Play. Now, this was a video requested by one of my viewers, and if you want to request a video, you can send a donation to my Cash App by clicking the link in the description box, or sending the donation to my PayPal by clicking a link in the description box. And if I know something about that subject, I will make that video for you. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available for the first time on Google Play, The Man Crisis. Learn why so many men are falling apart in an increasingly gynocentric world in The Man Crisis. Get your copy on Google Play today.